Oh, hello. You must be the new conspiracy theorist they just brought in from...
the United States.
Never mind. I would ask your name, but to be honest, there's really no reason to, because there's a really good chance that we will never ever meet in person. Anyway, welcome to 21CD Studios. A couple things to remember, and this is very important, but don't worry, the first one's really easy. Here we go. You can trust the government. They will always be there for you. Conspiracy theories aren't real. They're usually just things set up to distract you from your beautiful life. Think of them like propaganda. Now the third one is very important, so pay attention.
What's going on, everybody? Turn that stupid music off. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the 21CD podcast, where, at least for a blip in time, I am your ghost, John. Let's start at the beginning of where I want to start.
I had arranged with the head of security that I was going to come in. He said, "Sir, we have it from the highest authority. We are not to allow you entry into the U.S. Embassy." Understand me. Who was the highest authority of the State Department? Hillary Clinton. I'm an American citizen with a f***ing American passport. I'm sorry. I'm not wanted in America. I've got no crimes in America. Is it not a reason to say, I don't think I'm going to vote for you?
And yet you're here now.
For a month and a half, I was on the run. The reason that the government wanted to collect me was that after they had raided my property in 2012 in the jungle, shot my dog, abused me, destroyed $500,000 worth of my property over a bogus charge, I was pissed off. And so I donated to many secretaries within the government laptop computers, really nice ones that were preloaded with viral spyware. Within a week, the entire government computer system was under my control. I was watching, monitoring, listening. I was looking for information that they had set me up for that raid. I didn't find that. I did find out that the Minister of National Defense was the largest drug trafficker in all of Central America. And the Minister of Immigration, the largest human trafficker.
Well, we don't want to get killed by them either, so we're probably...
Yeah, well, everything seems to be starting to make sense a little bit. The pieces appear to be falling into place. The meat has been stacking high for years, but every little bloodthirsty fly in paradise gets swatted at some point, and lately they've been dropping like flies. So I want to tell you guys a little story. It has a title that I'm working with that I'm still developing, but is somewhere in the realm of, is Kanye West the Joker signaling out the cannibalistic system run by the Mossad child trafficking that also coincidentally appears to have hired Epstein to blackmail politicians with child in exchange for power? And that's exactly why we probably just kicked off World War III, even though it seems like literally nobody but maybe Netanyahu really even wanted it, and there's a good chance that even he is being forced in one way or another. It's something like that. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I think we can all agree that Kanye West is absolutely out of his mind, just like John McAfee was absolutely out of his mind, and just like Justin Bieber is perhaps absolutely out of his mind. But once in a while, these out-of-their-mind celebrities seem to really try to send us a real message before the big media absolutely clobbers their reputation. And as humans who are imperfect, I think that we need to look at the messages of other humans who appear to be trying to save us, and yet we ignore them because they are imperfect humans just like us. Just because somebody is imperfect does not mean their entire message or everything they're going through is somehow invalid. There might be a little nugget of goodness in there that we need to receive. And I think there are just a couple very small nuggets when it comes to Kanye West. He found himself embroiled in this whirlwind of controversy that many believe was far more calculated and sinister than people are letting on. He was hospitalized in 2016 in November at the West Hollywood home of a guy named Harley Pasternak, who was and is still, I guess, this figure kind of shrouded in suspicion by those who kind of question the official narrative. Allegedly, West's breakdown was framed as a temporary psychosis that was blamed on sleep deprivation and extreme dehydration, and this is when he kind of like really started losing it. But beneath the surface, people are saying that there's a darker truth, and that was that West was actually targeted for stepping out of line by the very forces who controlled his meteoric rise in the music industry. And central to this conspiracy is this Harley Pasternak guy, whose sudden closeness to West and his prominent clientele, like, of course, Kim Kardashian, Jennifer Hudson, Lady Gaga, Megan Fox, another one of those witch vampire types in Hollywood, and Alicia Keys, too. Pasternak appeared to be letting on to some things that maybe people weren't really expecting to be true. And that was that there may be some kind of influence or some kind of greater power in Hollywood that had some kind of control over all of these celebrities. And that's due largely because of some of these text messages that Kanye West leaked. In November 2022, these messages were dropped, and Pasternak was allegedly threatening West with institutionalization and stated explicitly that I could have you institutionalized again, and then they'll medicate the crap out of you, and you'll go back to zombie land forever, and saying other things like visits with the kids just won't be the same ever again, and creepy stuff like that. And this was all perceived as direct evidence by conspiracy theorists that Pasternak operated as an enforcer for a shadowy network determined to keep Kanye compliant. And as reports keep coming in, and stories keep breaking, and research keeps being done, and whistles continue to be blown, the idea that this is some kind of Mossad influence continues to grow larger and ever more supported. West, of course, as we all know, defied this control, and following his hospitalization, he began publicly disputing his bipolar diagnosis, claiming that it was a deliberate misdiagnosis intended to silence his outspoken criticism against powerful industry executives and political figures, many of whom he openly accused of manipulation and exploitation. And then, of course, his anti-Semitic outbursts in the late 2022, notably the DEFCON 3 tweet and his controversial remarks on Alex Jones, praising Adolf Hitler and questioning historical accounts of the Holocaust. They just kind of further amplified speculation among theorists and seemed to showcase that West was kind of like lashing out against the people who were controlling him. And he was doing that in the most damaging and disrespectful way that he could possibly think of. My opinion is that does seem to be some kind of totally ridiculously discrediting outburst, but at the base of it, what if he doesn't actually believe a lot of that stuff, or he's just really confused about a lot of that stuff, and what he's actually doing is he's waging essentially verbal warfare and attempting to basically show the entire world that these Mossad agents are all up in this place. And he's basically doing that in the way that he knows how. So he's being very insulting. He doesn't know, or maybe he does know and he doesn't care, that he's completely discrediting himself. He is just trying to break free. And it gets really weird when we start looking at his now ex-wife, I guess, Bianca Censori, who intriguingly held a high-ranking position at Yeezy, his company, and bore this kind of uncanny resemblance to Kim Kardashian, with some people saying that she too was a Mossad agent. And others saying that maybe she was put in place to protect him, but of course he believed that she was some kind of agent, and that's why he allegedly left her. And he is a maniac, and I've lost faith in him too. But I wonder if the outburst was rooted in something legitimate. They assert that Kanye's ongoing saga represents not just the struggle of one man against a hidden power structure, but it symbolizes the broader awakening of artists breaking free from this sort of clandestine control system long rumored to operate behind the glamorous veneer of the entertainment industry. And we talk about this a lot with the music industry. I've got an episode on Lady Gaga and Katy Perry, all about that. And you guys remember when the CIA would get people high on acid against their knowledge and then watch them behind false mirrors at brothels during Operation Midnight Climax? Often talked about in the same breath as MK Ultra, another topic that I have an episode on. And that's that whole mind control operation that the CIA was doing at the same time. I tell you, it's really not looking good for us folks, because nothing is sacred. And then, you know, I'm thinking about all this, and I remembered Big Jeffrey, Mr. McJefferson Epperstein, and Diddy the Diddler.
You know, has got something going on, and they're just like, hey, let's mount up and ride. There was a lot going on before this actually happened. And this is also a coordinated raid. There's also, we understand that they raided his home in Miami as well. I have no idea what exactly they're looking for. I'll be very honest about that. I didn't even know that there was legal issues going on with Sean Combs. And so I honestly don't have any of those kind of components. All I can tell you is right now, this is in the Holmby Hills area. That's his home that you see right there. And now it has a command post out front, and that command post belongs to Homeland Security. You have a number of armored vehicles, most of them belonging to Homeland Security. Got one there, a couple of them in the driveway as well. We did see one, I believe it was a sheriff's vehicle, that has since left the area. But there's still a number of that Homeland Security officers out there. And I'm talking about the soldiers. I'm talking about the boots on the ground type of guys that are still here. And I would venture to say probably in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 of them.
You know what would make a lot of sense? Using perversions against people while they're completely out of their mind because you got them high. Stuff just started falling into place for me when I started looking at it that way. It was like the scene from The Gentleman where Coach kidnaps that dude from the press and makes him commit atrocities on a pig while he's on some illicit substances.
The only thing you need to do to stop this little creative expression from becoming a social media sensation is lose any interest you have in the future of Mickey Pearson. I'm gonna leave you now to clean yourself up. Space bar, yeah? Have a hot drink as well, it might make you feel a little bit better. It's a fucking rough night for you. Enjoy the show.
When celebrities crash out over their masters and complete lack of privacy or control over their own lives, you really got to wonder why they're so insane to the point that a lot of them end up killing themselves or falling off of buildings or developing cancer or a heart attack or mysteriously dying or something like that. It always happens. You got to wonder what's going on. They act like someone's got a gun to their head. And I'm starting to get it because, yeah, I bet some of these celebrities actually were people at one point, and maybe that humanity can creep back, but because they have no idea as a human how to handle this realization that they are in a hell that they cannot escape, they just turn into this strange, unpredictable, confused human being that is constantly being pushed into place. And the media, who is also bought and controlled, they'll blame it on drugs or just the general blanket diagnosis known as the mental health crisis, whatever that means. Every time there's a shooter, it's another mental health crisis. What is that? But why am I even bringing all this up? I don't know. But when a little story like this flutters upon the breeze from somewhere in Cyberland and lands upon my desk in the midst of a week-long moment where I have no idea what to possibly research, and against the backdrop of World War III, I might add, I can't help but take a look. And for those that are just listening, please remember that every episode is also in video form on Spotify and YouTube. And if you're on Spotify, by the way, please drop your boy a 5-star rating because they do be trying to bring me down. Anyway, I found this article and it goes like this. Mossad's VIP pedophile blackmail material hacked by Iran days before Israel declared war. Oof, that's pretty damning. But you see, I have a lot to learn. I never really thought about this because I never really thought about Israel being our arch nemesis. I haven't lived enough years to have experienced widespread doubt toward Israel. So I'm kind of experiencing all this live and in 4K for the first time. So if you're like a little bit older than me and you've seen this kind of stuff before, bear with me as I discover it for the first time because I'm freaked out. What the heck is going on? Just days before the first strikes, Iranian state hackers pulled off one of the most devastating cyber ops in modern history, seizing a staggering 3 terabytes of top secret Israeli intelligence. Not just military secrets, but kompromat, files detailing Israel's vast surveillance operations, including deep cover programs inside the United States. And within that trove was evidence of crimes, unspeakable crimes, implicating some of the most powerful people on Earth. But this isn't just about war, it's about blackmail, betrayal, this kind of global house of cards that's on the brink of collapse these days. According to Mossad, the world isn't just a stage, it's their stage. They said that in a Vice interview that I can't share here because they'll flag me. They cast themselves as the directors, producers, and lead actors in a global psyop engineered to manipulate perception and advance their agenda. This isn't a theory. They admit it themselves. It's right there in their official motto: wage war through deception and trickery. At the heart of Israel's global deception lies a sprawling web of espionage and blackmail, one that even Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just connected to, but a key part of. His VIP network, his mansions wired with hidden cameras and islands with cameras everywhere, his ties to intelligence agencies, all threads in a much larger operation built on surveillance and coercion. Other people said, well, we don't know if he knew he was a Mossad agent or not. But this week, Iranian state hackers accessed a portion of Mossad's classified intelligence files. And among the revelations were what they describe as Netanyahu's personal blackmail archive. Private footage of world leaders and politicians captured through hidden cameras in their homes and on some of these Epstein properties, along with hacked phone and laptop data. Now, allegedly, this trove was used to control not just adversaries, but also powerful figures, both inside and, of course, outside of Israel. Such was the devastating nature of this hack, this kompromat, that Netanyahu knew there was absolutely no time to waste, because this wasn't just a breach, it was an existential threat to literally Israel's global influence and the shadow networks that it relies on, especially within the United States. So within hours of that breach, war was declared. Missiles were fired off, and under the cover of preemptive defense, Israel warplanes launched coordinated strikes on key Iranian military and intelligence facilities. But the real targets weren't weapons. They were people. Senior operatives, data servers, hidden bunkers, anything and anyone who could possibly possess or leak what Iran had uncovered. Why the urgency? Because if even a fraction of this goes public, if the world sees the true scale of Israel's blackmail operations, their deep ties to Western institutions, their weaponization of pedophilia, and how far they've gone to stage manage geopolitics, the fallout will be catastrophic. This isn't just about protecting national security. It's about preserving the illusion and ensuring the world never sees behind the curtain. I did some digging to find out exactly what they were talking about, and turns out that it's also just absolutely deplorable. But you don't need dark web hackers to help you out with that revelation. The revelation I apparently did need help with was the one where I forgot about how Epstein files were supposed to come out under Trump, And then they just never did. And the next thing you know, Trump is out here saying, and the next thing you know, Trump is out here saying, well, I'm not on the list. And Elon's saying, well, yeah, he is on the list. There's a lot of photos out there with Trump hanging out with what's his name, with Epstein. But just because you know a guy doesn't mean you engaged in the same sins as the guy. Where does the demonization begin? Does the demonization begin as soon as you shake his hand? Does the demonization begin as soon as you're in a photo with him? Where does it begin? But it is pretty weird that we don't get to see the list. And it's also pretty weird how even Elon Musk came around in the end. I wonder what kind of conversations were going on behind closed doors, what kind of messages were sent. I don't know. I don't know what's going on, because I remember George Bush and the invasion of Iraq, and I literally feel like I just stepped into a time warp that brought me right back there. And isn't war in the Middle East something that we were promised would absolutely not happen? But we're just going to drop a couple mother of all bombs on Iran and an actual nation, and then just like say something that reminded me of a conversation I've had with my teenage sister at one point. And it goes something like, we're not at war with you. We're at war with what you do. Like, okay, dude, you bombed Iran and now you're trying to convince them you're not at war with them. You're just at war with what they're doing. Trump, come on, bro. Now, at this point, I'm not trying to make any of this political. I would say the same things no matter who was in office. I don't care about that. I don't have a party that I feel like I need to defend or anything like that. But at this point, I'm sitting here smacking my face into the keyboard and screaming over the phone at random people, trying to figure out if I'm literally in hell already, I died or something, or if everything truly is completely random. And then one of my pigeons returned to me with this little article. Jeffrey Epstein victim suing over FBI's alleged failure to investigate Mossad honeypot operation. And apparently a book was written about this. 12 of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers, they launched legal action against the FBI for allegedly failing to bring the Mossad-linked pedophile financier and his co-conspirators to justice for running an illegal sex trafficking ring for the elite. The whole time that I spent as a church-going Christian, I thought the Antichrist was going to come in the form of Islam or some other religion. It wasn't going to be a branch of Christianity or anything that I thought was Christ adjacent, because those other denominations in my mind were just confused. Not necessarily like the literal hand of the Antichrist, but like these other denominations, that's exactly what I thought of Israel. That they were just a Christ adjacent religion that, wasn't necessarily wrong. They just were confused, and that, what I was being taught was the right thing. Again, I was a kid in the church. That's what I was taught, and that's what I believed because I was a kid. And then I was indoctrinated into automatically siding with them during every conflict because they were like America's little rock star over there. I remember watching the news and seeing them throwing rocks at tanks, and everybody was like, wow, they're so brave. And then I was basically convinced that they were just a giant military base for the USA. But recently, I've begun to feel something else, because I've been finding stuff like these articles and reporters in the East and underground news in the West and sources from beyond the normal internet. And then obviously on even normal news outlets that you guys are seeing all over the place too. And for the first time in my life, I question this. It's been a really interesting time in my life. Let me tell you. I hope it stops being interesting very soon so I can finally sleep. And now I'm not one of those crazy people who you'll catch waving signs, and I've never been a fan of the color blue or my women looking like 15-year-old boys with a beer belly, but I do hate genocide, and I hate being manipulated. And I began to realize that I think I'm being manipulated. And it's largely due to the fact that there's a genocide happening out there somewhere. And I don't think I need to go into much more detail than that. But the escalation with Iran was very strange to me. Even though I assumed something would happen, I did not assume that it was going to be the US who dropped the mother loads. Especially considering that Israel claimed to have total control over the airspace For all intents and purposes, it looked like Trump was going to stay out of this. Trump even said he wasn't going to do anything, if I remember correctly. He wanted Israel to stop. Remember that? He was calling for peace. But then he went to bed and he woke up with a changed heart. His little Mossad agent, under his pillow, reached up and around and stroked his little face, and he said, "You're gonna bomb Iran." And seemingly without a second thought, he ordered the bombing of Iran. So first of all, let me be the one to officially congratulate you guys on making it to World War III. I do believe that this is where it really starts. I think this is the beginning of World War III. I think that a lot of people will say that it started earlier, and a lot of people will say that it's going to start next year or something like that. But in World War III is a blanket title. Like, this probably won't be called that, just like World War I and II weren't immediately called World War I and II either. At first, they were just conflicts, a collection of operations that became a war. And so World War III may not be what this is ever called, but I'm seeing a world where the US gets wrapped up in this, Russia takes Ukraine, China goes for Taiwan, and everything just kind of falls apart. So welcome to World War III. I started seeing all this in a little bit of a different light. And it started as just kind of a shimmer on the edge, but it turned into something much more. Check this out.
He says in Galatians chapter 3, verse 28, "There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Christ Jesus. And if ye be Christ, then are ye Abraham's seed, and heirs according to the promise." And so according to the Bible here, the promises that God gave to Abraham, and this whole chapter is basically a commentary. And so it's not about being a Jew today. It's not about the lesser Gentile people today. It's not about any of those things. We are all one in Christ Jesus, and if ye be Christ, ye are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise.
Okay, but don't the Jews hate Christ or something? These Zionists that run Israel and seem to think the world is their stage, using the far-reaching tendrils of Mossad. And I kind of think about the whole concept of the Antichrist and all the revelations of us being totally obliterated by some coming thing. Revelations 24 says, "And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God." Take a listen to this.
Since 1850, when the Jews got all the political rights in Germany, in the German Reich, they have done three things which are really dramatic. Number one, they were a small minority of 2% of the population. At the time when Hitler came to power, 500,000 within 60 million German people. 500,000 among 60 million. They were a small minority. This small minority managed to control about 50% of the media, to give about 70% of all judges, to have a tremendous influence in movie and in theater and in literature. They were overrepresented. This is one thing. They were absolutely overrepresented, as today in England, in France, and in the United States. Second, Jews were at the origin of a lot of catastrophic financial bank crashes in Germany between 1870 and 1920. In that time, they made a lot of crashes which have, this is all documented. I mean, it's not Nazi propaganda or anti-Semitic or Arab propaganda. It's a lot of books have been published, even by Jewish Germans, about this problem. They have millions of German fathers have lost their incomes, their fortune, their savings, because of these Jewish gangsters, bank gangsters and speculation people. Then the third point, which was psychologically the most dangerous of all, they have introduced into German art and culture and theater and movie decadence, immorality. The first homosexual theaters, plays, were made in Berlin in the 1920s. The first adultery theater plays were made in the 1880s and 1890s, 100 years ago, by Jewish authors. Adultery, then sexual perversions of all sorts, sadism, masochism, a lot of homosexuality, all these things, and then decadent art, you know, an art which is absolutely ridiculous, so-called modern art. It was all pushed by Jewish intellectuals, and this created among the German people a big revolt. And they wrote books ridiculing Christianity, ridiculing Jesus.
So again, I asked for the bajillionth time, what the heck is going on? And am I hearing what I think I'm hearing? I dug deeper.
Christians have a reverence for the Jewish people, as we should. Our Lord was a Hebrew.
If they openly deny Jesus Christ, then there's this expectation that they can do whatever they want to a certain degree.
We should have a mercy.
We should still give them it because they're God's chosen people.
They are God's chosen people. We should have a mercy.
So are we, though.
Well, so actually, I don't necessarily, if you mean by the elect of Christianity being chosen, I will agree with that.
Everybody can be chosen.
The keepers of the law, which are the Jews, are God's chosen people.
But the law is finished. Well, no, Jesus Christ is the end of the law. That's what it is. That's the truth.
No. Jesus said, I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law.
So he fulfilled the law. Do they follow Jesus, or do they follow the old law?
It says that the ordinances of Moses
Old
were nailed.
Testament and New Testament.
You're not letting me finish. I'm sorry. I'm trying to help you out here. Again, we went too deep theologically. We have a difference of opinion. I believe that we have a moral obligation to defend the Jews and to understand that they are God's chosen people.
Should we defend the Palestinians, though?
Okay, you're not letting me finish. Thank you. Next question.
What?
Okay. And the reason is twofold. Number one, as a Christian, growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of it, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my... You pull out the phone and use the Google.
It's in Genesis. But so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it and you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker.
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two...
Hold on. Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But what? Hold on. Define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding?
Huh?
But let me make a point. We get massive benefits from Israel. Israel shares... The Mossad is one of the best intelligence sources on the planet.
So can you elaborate? And again, I'm going into this as someone who's always liked Israel and still does. But I also think at this point, given where we are, it's fair to ask rational questions about what the benefits are.
Good.
So does Mossad share all of its intelligence with us?
Oh, probably not, but they share a lot. Really? We don't share all of our intelligence with them, but we share a lot. It's a close alliance.
Do they spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other, and I assume all of our allies spy on us.
And that's okay with you?
You know what? One of the things about being a conservative is that you're not naive and utopian. You don't think humans are all... Part of the reason socialism doesn't work is the mantra from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs doesn't work. As a conservative, I assume people act in their rational self-interest.
So it's conservative to pay people to spy on you?
It's conservative to recognize that human beings act in their own self-interest, and every one of our friends spies on us, and I'm not...
Do you like it? That's my question. I'm not asking whether they have motive to do it. Of course they do. I understand that, and by the way, I'm not mad at them, but you're an American lawmaker, so I just want to know, hold on, I want to know your attitude. Yeah. You said that you're guiding principle, in fact, the only principle, the only criterion.
I said guiding, the overwhelming. I wouldn't say only.
Is it in America's interest? Is it in America's interest for Israel to spy on us, including on the president?
Okay. And there you go, guys. This is what I kind of realized, that I didn't live in the America that I thought I did. At the age that I am, in my early 30s, I've come to realize that my entire picture of the United States this whole entire time was indeed wrong. I'm probably going to flee to a third world country, which may not end up being much better, but will make me feel a little bit better. Now, I get the most debilitating headache when I hear Ted Cruz talk, so I didn't even get to the part where he said that we, as in the USA, bombed Iran instead of Israel bombed them. Little slip up there, but this is, of course, before Trump pulled an Uno reverse on himself and mobilized more than 125 aircraft, including America's $2.1 billion stealth bombers, to deliver a monumental blow in one of the largest strikes of the type. The bombers allegedly dropped bunker-busting GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on Fordo and Natanz, which were and I think there was a third one in there. I don't remember what the third one was. Sorry, whatever. But the point is, they dropped these things on these places where they thought they were enriching uranium or something like that, and doing something to get these Iranians nuclear bombs, which I don't think anybody actually believes they have.
Just the fact that he's looking for one is bad news.
Maybe we should just jump him now while we can.
But he hasn't done anything to us yet. Isn't that messed up? He's like, poor.
The Nerf nuke. Nerf nuke.
I haven't seen very many people come out and say, like, oh yeah, we definitely believe they've got them. Just like they didn't have them in Iraq, and just like they didn't have them in Afghanistan. The media was told that the Operation Midnight Hammer's strike package included these B-2 Spirit bombers, and those are the really scary looking ones, but also other craft. And they all departed Iranian airspace after the strikes without any known shots being fired at them while leaving. But let me get one thing clear right now. If there's like a credible threat against the USA, bro, I'm all for it. Bomb the hell out of these guys. I don't care who it is or who you gotta bomb. That's why we pay taxes. If there's a danger to us, keep us safe, please. I want to be safe. You want to be safe. We don't want to go to bed tonight wondering if, we're unsafe. We want to be safe. But if the danger is coming from your so-called closest ally due to insane honeypot blackmail schemes and spy campaigns by arguably the most adept intelligence force on the planet, and I'll be frank, it sounds more like an order than a core belief. But suddenly some of these crash outs from celebrities and politicians, they really actually start to make sense. Like, these guys are dancing around tripwires if this is actually the reality that they live in, where if they ever say the wrong thing or step out of line, they could just be just like that, taken out. And it turns out that when Mossad is interested in something, they get really, really into it. I mean, Iran has executed 300 people in 2 months, all accused of being Mossad. Who knows how many were, but the fact that such fear can be spread is incredible. Their motto, once again, makes sense when this level of awareness is achieved. By way of deception you shall engage in war, allegedly inspired by Proverbs 24:6. But the thing is, Kanye isn't the only person to talk about these guys in Hollywood, twisting things behind the scenes by way of deception. They are literally everywhere in our media, in our government, in our entertainment, in our industries, in our banks, in our healthcare, and it would appear that they got dirt on just about everyone. Thus, they are the fingers that guide Pinocchio. But what is the ultimate goal here? Because one theory seems to be really taken off, and it seems like the Zionists are actually attempting to force prophecy. These were the closing words of Trump's address Saturday night following the military strike that brought the U.S. directly into Israel's war against Iran and most likely World War III. He said, "I just want to say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Many supporters are describing this conflict as a battle between good and evil. And a lot of people are looking to the book of Revelation right now. President Trump's decision, but this is what not everybody really realizes or sees or has seen. President Trump's decision was foreshadowed days earlier when U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee sent him a message, later published on Truth Social and shared by the White House, urging the president to essentially listen to the heavens when deciding how to proceed with Israel's war on Iran. And, of course, we listen to God for all things, right? But this was a little bit weird. Huckabee, who's an evangelical Christian, emphasized that he was not trying to pressure the president, but to encourage him. And he wrote, "God saved you in Butler, Pennsylvania," referring to his assassination attempt, "to be the most consequential president in a century, and perhaps ever." He added, "There has never been a president in my lifetime like you, not since Truman in 1945. The ambassador also urged President Trump to listen to his voice, apparently referring to God, and said that the president would hear from the heavens on the issue. I don't know if Mike Huckabee is some kind of wizard, some sort of Jesus wizard or what, but he seems to have a lot of words on this. Some observers believe the letter was publicized to reassure the evangelical base that helped elect President Trump, as if they are trying to get all the evangelicals to sort of believe that God is somehow speaking to Trump, and framing any decision to strike not as an act of aggression, but essentially as one inspired by divine purpose. From the beginning, Israel's campaign against Iran has been steeped in biblical imagery, something evangelical Christians and religious Jews alike are immediately recognizing in the war's name, which is Operation Rising Lion. This is some type of biblical foreshadowing. Israeli leaders also appear to be leaning into that interpretation. We are beginning to see this picture where it appears that the United States and Israel actually believe that they must go to war for religious purposes. That's what it sounds like. On June 12th, before Israel's first strike, Prime Minister Netanyahu visited the Western Wall in Jerusalem, where he placed a handwritten note between the stones. In hindsight, it hinted at the strikes that would soon follow, because the message, which was released by his office a week ago on Friday, read that the people shall rise up as a lion, rising lion. And it comes from Numbers 23:24 in the Torah, which says, "Behold, the people shall rise as a great lion, and lift up himself as a young lion. He shall not lie down until he eats of the prey, and drinks the blood of the slain." Now, this verse is part of a blessing given by Balaam, a pagan seer hired by Balak, who's king of Moab, to curse the people of Israel. But instead of cursing them, Balaam blessed them, declaring that Israel would rise strong and defeat its enemies with divine backing. He continues with other prophetic blessings, including like predictions of the downfall of Moab and Edom and other nations. Numbers 24:17, which says, "A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel." Many interpret this as a reference to the coming of the Messiah. The Bible foretold the scattering of the Jewish people around the world and their eventual regathering, something evangelicals believe was fulfilled with the founding of the state of Israel in 1948 and the sort of reunification of Jerusalem in 1967. Basically, once Israel became a nation and Jerusalem was unified, the clock was ticking down before the end of days. He also pointed to this prophecy in Ezekiel 38 and 39, which describes a vast coalition, including Persia, modern-day Iran, that will rise against Israel. This future war is often called the Battle of Gog and Magog, and in that vision, God is the ultimate victor, but Iran didn't really rise against Israel. Sure, they may have been, bringing in all these little terror units all these years and all that kind of stuff, but it feels like it's the prophecy isn't quite fulfilled. It doesn't feel like that's the right piece. But this name, Rising Lion, is being considered incredibly foretelling, that the nations need to be aware that Israel is rising, and she is shedding off the fear and starting to know who she is. And that, I don't know, might not be a good thing, because this Israel that we're seeing might not be the Israel that's actually being talked about in the Bible. And yet these Christian Zionists are enthused. They consider it miraculous, and that it is beyond their comprehension, and that the world is missing it. God does not want them to be spectators, but active participants, allegedly. We are all supposed to move towards fulfilling these prophecies to bring about the end times. That is the movement. We are attempting to bring about the end days on our own, because suddenly there is this religious zeal among these powers, the USA and Israel. All of a sudden, there's this religious zeal out of nowhere, and everything has gotten real, let's fulfill the prophecy up in here. We have to be reminded of the words that I say all the time, that Jesus said to his disciples in Matthew 24:36, "But about that day or hour, nobody knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." And that's in regard to when he will return. We should avoid those who prophesize a date for Christ's return, and maybe those who try to bring about Christ's return through force. Another curious thing is that Netanyahu has actually referred to his enemies in the Middle East as the Amalekites, which is quite interesting considering Gary Wayne, who's the author of the book The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, believes that the Amalekites were the race of giants. And that book says the Amalekites were in existence as a race of giants in the epoch of the antediluvian Nephilim. In other words, they were Nephilim, both before and after the flood. Were the Amalekites a race of giants that descended from Gilgamesh? Or were they the first strain of giants, the incorruptible race hidden from the deluge by fallen angels? Amalekites do not appear to be a race created by the typical impassioned fallen angels after the flood, such as Anikidan or those of Sodom. If ancient times does not refer to antediluvian times, then it most certainly refers to an age before Abraham, and most likely to the age immediately following the flood. So you got world leaders throwing around Nephilim talk a little bit, and that's also kind of spicy. The Bible says, "And as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man." Are the Nephilim awakening soon? Will they once again show their face? If this truly is the end of days, perhaps they are the cryptids in the woods, or the demons, and perhaps they will plague the earth in the end times. It seems like they will. Seems like they will make us wish for death. That's what it appears the scriptures say. Perhaps they are just merely waiting for the ultimate host body to be created. And that's the whole point of this post-man. Perhaps with the Antichrist will come the flesh suits for these abominations. The reemergence of hybrid Nephilim-type entities during the end times certainly also appears to be hinted at in scriptures. It's actually a phenomenon that bears great relevance to events already taking place in the world right now. Alien abduction, and how this phenomenon is likely identified with fallen angels who are masquerading as extraterrestrials, being preoccupied with these sort of genetic experiments and human hybridization. And in his book, Confrontations, A Scientist's Search for Alien Contact, the highly regarded UFO researcher Dr. Jacques Vallée concluded the following: contact with aliens is only a modern extension of the age-old tradition of contact with non-human consciousness in the form of angels, demons, elves, and sylphs. Researchers Tom Horn and Chris Putnam detail much evidence supporting these subjects in their information-packed book called Exo Vaticana. Based on the evidence they present, much of which is beyond our scope here, They conclude by saying that today, what some call alien abduction, in which a breeding program allegedly exists resulting in alien-human hybrids, seems but a contemporary retelling of similar DNA harvesting and genetic manipulation by those mysterious beings called Watchers, whose genetic modification activities we have discussed. So we should not be surprised that activity like this is taking place in our modern times, and we should expect it to increase further as we get closer to the time of the end. A possible glimpse of this activity might be given to us in Daniel 2:43. In Daniel 2, the prophet Daniel interprets the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar's dream of this great multi-metallic statue. He then saw a stone, not cut by human hand, come down and strike the statue, breaking it into pieces, and the wind carried away the pieces like dust, leaving no traces behind. The stone turned into a gigantic mountain that covered the earth, and this dream greatly troubled the king, and none of his priests or his advisors or soothsayers were able to give the interpretation, but Daniel could. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron. For as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron. For as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with clay, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another. Now, many commentators have pointed out the fact that verse 43 seems to be describing a type of being that is something other than the seed of men. In other words, since the seed of men in the Bible is a label meaning all mankind, then in order for something to mix itself with the seed of men, that something must be something other than the seed of men, right? What could that refer to? Are there any other beings notoriously mentioned in Scripture who historically intermingled with the seed of men? Fallen angels have intermingled their seed with the seed of men in the past, producing these hybrid Nephilim offspring. And according to this cryptic prophecy of Satan's final kingdom during the end times, we can see that this activity will once again come to bear. Author, pastor, and researcher Douglas Hamp further bolsters this conclusion as he gives us further insight into the morphology of this passage. The text says that they will mingle themselves. They is somehow, sometimes, translated as these kings. And I will be the first to admit that I'm not an etymology wizard, but I can understand it, and I can do basic research. But the word that defines they is in fact these kings in some of these interpretations. And just like those two materials do not blend well, neither will these kings with the seed of men. They, these 10 kings, must be some beings that are able to mix their seed with mankind, but are different from mankind. And just as we saw in the Jude 1:7 passage, the strange flesh reference, mingling with a different kind, seems to be referring to demons or fallen angels having sexual relations with women. Interestingly, the Bible prophesies the return of satyrs in the last days. We talked about that in the Goat Man episode. It is also interesting to make note of the context in which they're mentioned. This chapter in which they're mentioned speaks prophetically concerning the future destruction of Babylon that is to occur during the judgment phase of the broad day of the Lord. The following passage in Isaiah describes satyrs inhabiting these future ruins of Babylon during this time. Some interpret the verse differently, but the most interesting reading is found in Brenton's Septuagint translation, and we will keep in mind that the Septuagint was the Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament that was completed several hundred years before Christ and may preserve the earliest reading. I just picked one up, and it's kind of interesting. It says, "But wild beasts shall rest there, and the houses shall be filled with howling, and monsters shall rest there, and devils shall dance there." That's Isaiah 13:21. Several times in scripture, the Hebrew term is rendered devils instead of satyr. And that's examples of that are in Leviticus and 2 Chronicles. And it actually seems to signify a pagan god. We know the ancients worshipped these hybrid beings and esteemed them as gods, and we recognize their true identity as either fallen angels or Nephilim hybrids. According to this prophecy in Isaiah, they will apparently be making a comeback in the end times. Interestingly, this verse mentioning satyrs or devils in Isaiah 13 is preceded by several other unusual verses that we may not easily recognize in the modern English translations. However, the unusual nature of these verses is better preserved in the Septuagint, and they speak of giants being released during the day of the Lord, and are said to enter through what might be an ancient description of an interdimensional gateway or portal. These verses in Isaiah 13, 1-9 in the Septuagint read as follows: "Giants are coming to fulfill my wrath, rejoicing at the same time and insulting. A voice of many nations on the mountains, even like to that of many nations. A voice of kings and nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts has given command to a warlike nation to come from a land afar off, from the utmost foundation of heaven. The Lord and his warriors are coming to destroy all the world. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is near, and destruction from God shall arrive. Therefore every hand shall become powerless, and every soul of man shall be dismayed. The elders shall be troubled, and pangs shall seize them, as of a woman in travail. And they shall mourn one to another, and shall be amazed, and shall change their countenance as a flame. For behold, the day of the Lord is coming, which cannot be escaped, a day of wrath and anger, to make the world desolate, and to destroy sinners out of it." It seems clear that the events occurring in those days will include some of the strangest things that one can imagine, and they might apparently involve satyrs, monsters, giants, portals, hybrids. Life on Earth is going to become a very bizarre thing, very bizarre place before it's all over. Horrifying, extremely lethal, and it gives us some insight into the possible meaning of the prophetic words of Jesus in Luke 21:26, which describes the same time period. Now, I'm not here to fearmonger, and I'm just telling you things that I'm noticing. It seems we are on a bullet train for the end times, and as I've always said, I believe there will be monsters there. So who can say for sure if very soon you and I will be fleeing into the mountains of Appalachia to escape the Nephilim hunting parties? If technology continues to advance, it's probably not very long until our very consciousness will be able to be tracked like a cell phone on a sort of quantum level. We are approaching quite strange and unpredictable times. We must question everything and everybody, including those we elect to lead us, because it appears that all of the sudden, the agenda has shifted. There seems to be a new goal. Don't drink the water. Question everything.